Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and today on the program our conversation is going to be on improving business environment, and we'll be paying particular attention to the taxation issue. I'm being joined on the program by an audit and taxation consultant and a social entrepreneur in international development. From my immediate left, I have Ola Oyinlola. He is an audit and taxation consultant. And to my far left, a social entrepreneur and international development expert, Yemisi Joel Osebor. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it's an interesting, concept, this business environment improvement thing. But could you just explain to us what really is business environment improvement?
The business environment improvement, environment actually, is the complex nature of things that govern how business have been done. And it includes legal, it includes policy issues, it includes regulatory frameworks. But all those things are necessary for businesses to thrive. So it is necessary for any economy that is growth-oriented to look at all these regulatory issues to ensure that businesses are in the it's like an incubation. If a baby wants to be incubated, you need a very nice place to do that.
Okay.
So the business environment provides that platform for business to really, really grow.
Okay, now, so Ola, looking at our own business environment and all what she's mentioned, all the issues that should be looked at if you want to know if your environment is conducive enough for a business to be incubated, like she has said, what would you point out are the issues or the challenges or the success that we have recorded?
Well, thank you. Just like what she has said, looking at the policy, number one, we don't have consistent policy in Nigeria, and that is one of the major problems that we face, or that businesses face in Nigeria. Looking at the regulation, institutional framework, even services coming from the government side. You remember, when you do business in Nigeria, for example, you need to go through the government agencies, government parastatals to get your things done. And then if you look at the institutional framework, how they are structured, a lot of issues are coming up from there. And that is why today we're talking about how do we improve the business environment in Nigeria? How do we create policies that are going to be conducive for business in Nigeria? How do we create that institutional framework? How do we get the policy? How do we get the legal framework to work? These are the issues that we're talking about in Nigeria.
But Ola, let me not, sound or make it seem as if we're forecasting doom. If we didn't have very good policies, for our businesses to thrive, why do we still have more investors coming in? Why do we still, get reports and news that Nigeria is the place to go? It's where everything is happening, and if you don't have your business in Nigeria, then you don't have any business anywhere.
Good. We have policies in Nigeria. What we're talking about is consistent policies. Consistent policies is that what we have this year, we must also build on it the following year, and on like that. But if you look at Nigeria, investors are coming to Nigeria. How many of them? If you look at the World Bank report, doing business in Nigeria, Nigeria ranked about 147 out of about 189 countries in the world. Looking at seven parameters. But let me take you back again to Nigeria and other African countries. If you look at the entire continent, making up about 55 countries, if you take South Africa away from the whole continent, then we have Nigeria. If you don't do business in Nigeria, where do you want to do business? Nigeria alone today accounts for almost half of what we're talking about in Africa. So Nigeria is still a major force in Nigeria, in the whole continent. But what we're talking about is the consistent policy, regulatory framework, the legal framework. If you have issues with anybody in Nigeria, how do we resolve the issue? What about business foreclosure? What about insolvency regulation? There are so many issues that we're talking about here. Even to set up business in Nigeria today, how do you register your business today? How long does it take you? How much are you going to spend to register your business? If you get to another country like Rwanda, it takes you maybe 2 or 3 orders to cross to register your business. What are we talking about in Nigeria? You need to go through a lot of processes before you can get your businesses registered in Nigeria. So these are the issues that we're talking about here. We have policies, but we must also make sure that these policies work. Not only that they work, they must be consistent.
Yeah. Okay, let me also contribute. There's something about Nigeria that is natural, and that gives us a leverage, and that's population. We have the market. So when investors are looking at where products and services as high demand, they look beyond all the challenges that they will confront. So they do their cost-benefit analysis and they say, because if you look at Nigeria, over 160 million people, that's what the census is saying. I'm sure we're more than that. So they look at that cost-benefit and they're like, oh, wow, no matter, if there's no power, let's say we provide a generator, but I want this market. And Nigeria is a country going somewhere. There are potentials. We have young population. We have the human resources. It's just that we as Nigerians have not valued what we have. And others outside are seeing it and they're tapping into it. And that's why we have that market and we need to use it to our benefit.
Okay, now, so looking at, the numbers and the statistics, as it were, how much improvement has been recorded in business, at least in the last 3 years? Has there been much improvement at all?
Well, they said Nigeria has been growing 7% consistently. That's the GDP.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm a social entrepreneur. I beg to differ on some issues because there's a difference between economic growth and economic development, and that's the challenge. Economic growth looks at GDP. Economic development looks at per capita, the standard of living, what is happening. So you see Nigeria is growing, we are making more money, we have oil, we have more foreign direct investment, but if you look at the standard of living, it's falling.
Yes, and then this recent report from the World Bank
Yeah,
that's listing Nigeria among
the extreme poor nations.
It's real. We can sit in this in a comfortable zone. I think there's no poverty. People are really, really poor. Students come out of school and they don't have those available jobs, and that's why it is important for the government to create an enabling environment that will ensure that businesses thrive, because government cannot employ everybody. They can only provide a little to the employment creation. They have programs, agriculture and things like that, but if there's a vibrant private sector, then poverty will reduce. I want to talk about the private sector because people just mix that up. They both consist, the SMEs, the MSMEs, and the informal sector. I'm an advocate for the informal sector. There are over 70% of them in Nigeria. And we need to see how we'll help them, because they employ more people than even the conglomerates that we have here. So we need to create that enabling environment. Solving power alone can just project our development, to some astronomical, levels. So there are little things that we need to take into consideration, and these things are not rocket science.
Okay. Well,
Let me also add to what she said. You see, looking at the growth in GDP, we're saying 7% growth almost every year. But look at the sectors. Apart from agri is about 40% of GDP. Look at the financial service industry, maybe another contribution to GDP. But let us look at the main sector, manufacturing. What is the contribution of manufacturing to GDP? Less than 3%. And this is where we need more people to work. This is where we can get development. If you look at Iran, even some other countries that you don't even reckon with, the contribution of manufacturing sector to GDP is almost about 16 to 20%. Nigeria only is about 3%. So this is the major problem. And what are the issues? Like she said, infrastructures are not there. The moment these things are created, and we need constant policy, so that even when you want to set up, for example, those who bought into the power generation and distribution company, they are still battling with a lot of issues. Right now, we're not talking about the finance alone. We're talking about capacity development, even in that sector. So if you look at those critical sectors, their growth, their contribution to GDP is still very low.
Now, Ola, let me take you back to a point you made. In the ranking of the World Bank's ease of doing business ranking, Nigeria is ranked 147 out of 189 countries.
Yes.
Now, you said there were some parameters. You said about 7 parameters.
There are
were
10
used.
of them.
10 parameters.
Yes.
Okay, because he said 7. So there are 10
About
parameters,
yeah.
that were used. Could you list out some of those parameters? Because you see, it was very disturbing when we got that report yesterday that Nigeria is among the most extremely poor countries in Africa. So could you just,
Let me list them out.
Okay.
Starting a business is one parameter, because ease of doing business, if you can't start a business, you can't formalize it and you cannot grow. Another one is dealing with construction permits. Nigeria, the land tenure system in Nigeria is one of the worst in the world. Yes, because people cannot convert their land into collateral. They don't have titles to their land. So their land is not titled. So that impedes their ability to grow, to lend, and all that. Getting electricity is another parameter. You know about that. Since the privatized, I'm serious, I've been using more generator since this privatization.
But if you listen to some of those companies that actually bought into this, they actually said that we shouldn't expect to see remarkable improvement anytime soon.
Yes, we
have to give them time
I know, but you sell that way in Nigeria. If it was Europe, there'll be a stopgap. They won't make you worse off. Let's stop taking nonsense. I'm sorry to say. We shouldn't be spending more money. You shouldn't put us in darkness, because you should have planned that as part of the change. But we accept everything that they give to us. If it's an advanced country, can they do without electricity? No, they can't. They will die, because their weather won't even give them an opportunity to stay out with electricity.
Okay, so let's look at the other parameters.
The other ones are registering property. How easy is it to register property in Nigeria? So that's another parameter. Getting credit. You know it. Aha, that's another parameter. So you can see that we're not doing too well in all this. The other is protecting investors. If I come to a country, am I protected? How? How do I mediate insolvency and issue? Paying taxes. All right? And the other three is trading across borders, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. So those are the 10 parameters that the World Bank looks.
Okay.
And it's the same across all the 189 countries.
And if you look at the parameters, there's no way you tackle one that you don't need to lead to another one. Taking land, for example, you have proper registration of title deeds. That means you can unlock the value in that land. You can use it to create more wealth. And that is exactly the point. Looking at paying taxes, at the federal level, they are already synchronized. Yeah. But at the state level, you need to understand what to pay, how much to pay.
Yes. So
then
now,
at the local government level, this is where we really have the problem.
Okay, so now that brings us to the focus of this conversation. Since we've understood the business environment improvement, let's talk about taxation, which is one of the parameters that was actually listed in that report. How important, first of all, is a good tax system to economic growth and development? Let's look at that first.
Yeah. I think tax needs to be fair. All right. Usually people accuse Nigeria of multiplicity of taxes, and I agree. Why? Structurally, we have multiplicity of taxes because by our constitution, there are some taxes to be collected at the federal level, there are some by the state, and some by the local government. So if you're using that as a yardstick, there's a multiple layer. In other countries, maybe you just pay one to a particular source and they sort that out. But in Nigeria, if I'm a company, I'm going to pay my company tax to the federal, my payee to the state, my tenement rate to the local government. So that takes time away from businesses. So in that, one can say there's a multiple. But there are some that has to do with practice. In the cases where taxpayers don't know what to pay, and people charge them the same time for different things. So the taxation system needs to be reviewed in terms of practice, and this is common even more at the local government level.
You know, last year, the coordinating minister of the economy actually, met with some key players, and they actually talked about this multiple taxation that we seem to be experiencing. Some states have actually tried to, streamline how much. Ogun State even also has also done something like that. So try to streamline the amount of the kind of taxes that they make businesses to pay. Now, so many, like I said, have been streamlined, but has it really been practical? Because it's not just Lagos State that we're looking at. Lagos State, yes, is a commercial hub. Ogun State is just next door. But these are not the only states where you have a lot of businesses. How has it worked in other states?
We expect that to happen in all the 36 states. Tax harmonization is just one step. Like you said, as what has been the experience? Some states have done tax harmonization. Lagos State, for example, Ogun State is also doing. Kano is also working on their own. But what we're saying is, apart from tax harmonization, then we need to get back to the people that are going to be paying the rates. At the local government level, that is where we have the people. Like you said, we have the micro people that are doing businesses, retail businesses. These are the people that we're talking about. These are the people that will pay the rates and the levies. Do they understand what to pay and how much to pay? And that is the next step after harmonization, the sensitization. Are these people aware? Who is going to tell them about even the harmonization law? Many of them are not even aware of the existence of this law. That today in Lagos State, you don't need to pay about 160 items anymore. It has been converted to about 16 collectible items. So these 16 collectible items are the ratepayers aware. Today, when you get to a local government and you deal with the people, you ask them, are you aware of the Lagos Amenities law? Or they tell you what is it about. So we need a lot of awareness in that regard, so that people will understand that there's a law. And not, in addition to that, amount to be paid must also be clearly specified to them.
So let's just take a quick break now and catch our breath. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. When we come back, we'll talk about administrative measures that can actually help to improve tax-related doing business indicators. So you're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and today on the program, we're looking at improving business environment with particular emphasis on taxation issues. And we'll take a quick break now. We'll come back and continue this conversation.